There is a city on a teardrop-shaped island in the Indian Ocean. Arab traders came to it 1,000 years ago and called the island the Pearl of the Indian Ocean. They were not wrong. For centuries, Colombo was one of the great port cities of Asia. The Portuguese came. The Dutch came. The British came. Each one looked at this city and decided it was worth fighting for. And then the island's own people decided the same thing. For 26 years, from 1983 to 2009, Sri Lanka tore itself apart in a civil war so brutal, so inventive in its violence, and so total in its destruction that it changed the way the entire world thinks about terrorism. The Tamil Tigers did not just fight a war. They invented new ways to kill people. The suicide vest, the female suicide bomber, naval suicide boats, an air force built from crop dusters, and the city that Arab traders once called the Pearl of the Indian Ocean became a city of checkpoints, barricades, bombings, and disappeared people. This is Colombo. And this is the story of how a pearl gets shattered. If this is the kind of history nobody taught you in school, you are in exactly the right place. Subscribe to Vaulted Cities right now so you never miss another story the world tried to forget. Colombo's history dates back to the 5th century CE, with Arab traders settling there in the 8th century. The Portuguese, Dutch, and British developed the port from the 16th century, with Colombo becoming the island's capital in 1815. To understand what Colombo lost, you need to understand what it was. Colombo's story begins over 2 millennia ago when it was known to ancient traders from Rome, Arabia, China, and various parts of Southeast Asia. The natural harbor made it an ideal trading post along the historic Silk Route. The island of Ceylon, as Sri Lanka was known to the colonial world, sat at the crossroads of every major Indian Ocean trade route. Spices, gems, cinnamon, pearls, all of it passed through Colombo's harbor. Arab traders, Chinese merchants, Indian sailors, and European adventurers all converged on this port because this port was where the money was. Modern Colombo was first established by the Portuguese as an outpost in 1517. In the following centuries, it was employed by the Dutch from 1656 to 1796 and the British from 1796 to 1948 to penetrate inland. Each colonial power left its mark on the city. The Portuguese built forts. The Dutch built canals. The British built railways, hospitals, schools, and some of the most elegant colonial architecture in Asia. The British transformed Colombo into a planned city with wide boulevards, colonial buildings, and modern infrastructure including railways, hospitals, and schools. By the time Sri Lanka gained independence from Britain in 1948, Colombo was a genuinely cosmopolitan city. Sinhalese, Tamil, Muslim, Burgher, Parsi communities all living side by side. A city of grand hotels, tree-lined boulevards, a harbor that handled goods from every corner of the world. The Gal Face Hotel, built in 1864, one of the oldest hotels in Asia, still stood on the seafront, its colonial grandeur intact. The city's oldest districts, the fort and the Petta, hummed with the commerce of centuries. Colombo was not just a beautiful city. It was a city that had worked for a very long time. And then, slowly, then suddenly, it stopped working. The fault line that destroyed Colombo was not new. It had been there since before independence. Buried under the cosmopolitan surface of colonial life. Waiting. Sri Lanka had 2 major ethnic communities. The Sinhalese, who made up about 70% of the population, predominantly Buddhist, concentrated in the south and center of the island. And the Tamils, who made up about 11%, predominantly Hindu, concentrated in the north and east. For centuries these communities had coexisted, imperfectly, sometimes tensely, but without catastrophic violence. Then came independence. And the politicians who followed it. In 1956 the newly elected government passed the Official Language Act, making Sinhala the sole official language of Ceylon, replacing English. Overnight, Tamil civil servants who had built careers in the colonial administration found they could no longer work in their government. Tamil students who had been educated in English now found themselves excluded from university entrance examinations conducted in a language they had never been taught. It was not a violent act, but it was a devastating one. The message it sent to the Tamil community was unmistakable. This is not your country. Over the next 2 decades, discrimination accumulated. University quotas limited Tamil admissions. Government hiring systematically excluded Tamils. The Tamil community's repeated attempts to negotiate, to find a political solution, a federal arrangement, some form of power sharing, were rejected, ignored, or abandoned by successive Sinhalese-dominated governments. By the late 1970s, a generation of young Tamil men had concluded that politics had failed them. And they turned to something else. By the 1970s, growing frustration among Tamil youth led to the emergence of militant groups advocating armed resistance. Among them, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam became the most prominent and organized. The LTTE sought to establish an independent Tamil state, Tamil Eelam, in the northern and eastern regions of Sri Lanka. Their leader was a man named Velupillai Prabhakaran. He had grown up in the north of Sri Lanka, watching his community systematically excluded from the country that bore their name on its flag. He was a quiet man, obsessive about physical fitness, who read about revolutionary movements around the world and combined what he learned into something entirely his own. Prabhakaran did not just build a guerrilla army. The LTTE pioneered the use of suicide terrorism as a systematic weapon of war through its Black Tiger unit, assassinating high-profile targets including Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in 1991 and Sri Lankan President Ranil Singh Premadasa in 1993. Read those names again. The Prime Minister of India, killed by a Tamil Tiger suicide bomber at a campaign rally in 1991. The President of Sri Lanka, killed by a Tamil Tiger suicide bomber at a public event in 1993. In areas it controlled, particularly the Vani region after 1990, the LTTE established a comprehensive, if authoritarian, civil administration with its own police, courts, tax system, and bank, projecting an image of a state in waiting. The Tamil Tigers were not just a terrorist organization. They were a state. With a navy. With an air force. With a tax system. With courts and police and banks. With a global fundraising network that stretched from Toronto to London to Sydney, drawing on the Tamil diaspora communities around the world. The LTTE established the Sea Tigers, a naval wing utilizing fast attack suicide boats packed with explosives to target the Sri Lankan Navy. Later, they developed the Air Tigers, constructing hidden airstrips in northern forest areas and modifying light aircraft to carry gravity bombs for night raids on military bases and the capital. A rebel organization in a small island nation had built its own navy and air force. And they were targeting Colombo. The war officially began after a day of riots targeting Tamils in Colombo in July 1983, a month which has since been dubbed Black July. The fighting lasted just under 3 decades. Black July. In July 1983, 13 Sri Lankan soldiers were killed in an LTTE ambush in the north. The news reached Colombo and triggered something that had been waiting to explode. Ethnic tensions erupted into the start of a civil war when 13 soldiers were killed in an LTTE attack, sparking anti-Tamil riots in Colombo and other parts of the country that left thousands of people dead and forced Tamils to leave Sinhalese majority areas. Tamil homes and businesses in Colombo were burned. Tamil families fled or were killed. The cosmopolitan city that had housed all communities for centuries suddenly showed what had been hiding beneath its surface. The war had come to the capital. And over the next 26 years it kept coming back. On January 31, 1996, the central bank bombing in the heart of Colombo's financial district saw a truck packed with explosives driven through the gates and detonated, killing 91 people, injuring over 1,400, and severely damaging the country's economy. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka. In the heart of the financial district. 91 dead. 1,400 injured. On the 15th of October, 1997, a group of up to 6 fighters from the LTTE's Black Tigers drove a truck laden with approximately 350 kilograms of explosives into the car park of the Galadari Hotel, a 5-star luxury hotel in the heart of Colombo's business and government district, where they shot and killed 4 unarmed security guards. They then detonated the explosives. The World Trade Center. The Galadari Hotel. The city's most prestigious addresses becoming the targets of truck bombs. And the airport. On the morning of July 24, 2001, 14 elite Black Tiger commandos carrying light anti-tank weapons, rocket-propelled grenades, and automatic rifles infiltrated the Bandaranaike International Airport. They destroyed half the Sri Lankan Airlines fleet on the ground. The country's main international airport, the gateway to the Pearl of the Indian Ocean, attacked by a rebel organization that had built its own air force. Colombo became a city of checkpoints. Sandbag security positions on every major street corner. Armored vehicles outside government buildings. Random vehicle searches. The Grand Hotel with its colonial splendor now surrounded by concrete blast barriers. People learned to live differently. They noticed suspicious vehicles. They avoided crowded places when tension was high. They developed the particular sixth sense of people who have lived long enough with the possibility of sudden violence that they have stopped being surprised by it. In 2005, a new president took power in Sri Lanka. Mahinda Rajapaksa had one position on the Tamil Tigers: destroy them. Not negotiate. Not reach a political settlement. Not find a compromise that had eluded every previous government for 25 years. Destroy them. A 2011 UN High Commissioner for Human Rights report found credible allegations of war crimes on both sides, including the LTTE's recruitment of children and use of suicide bombing to kill civilians, as well as the Sri Lankan government's indiscriminate bombing of civilians and unlawful detention, torture, and forced disappearance of Tamil civilians. The final phase of the war, fought in the north of the island in 2008 and 2009, was not fought by the rules of any convention. The government declared a war without witnesses. Journalists were kept out. International observers were excluded. Aid organizations were barred. In the sealed-off north, what happened to Tamil civilians in the final months of the war is still being debated, documented, and denied to this day. What is not debated is the outcome. In May 2009, the Sri Lankan government announced that Velupillai Prabhakaran was dead. The Tamil Tigers were finished. The war officially began after a day of riots targeting Tamils in Colombo in July 1983 and ended in May 2009 when the Sri Lankan government announced that they killed the LTTE leader. 26 years. 100,000 dead by most estimates. Hundreds of thousands displaced. A generation of both Sinhalese and Tamil Sri Lankans who had grown up knowing nothing but war. And a question that the military victory did not answer. What do you do with the fault line that started it all? Today Colombo is in the middle of one of the most dramatic transformations of any city in Asia. The checkpoints are gone. The blast barriers have been removed from the hotels. The sandbag security positions have disappeared from the street corners. In their place, glass towers, highway overpasses, a brand new port city called Port City Colombo being literally built on reclaimed land from the sea, a Chinese finance development that will eventually house a financial district, residential towers, hotels, and a marina. The Gal Face Hotel still stands on the seafront, still grand, still colonial, still serving afternoon tea to people who have no idea that 30 years ago the city around it was being bombed. But the transformation is sitting on unresolved foundations. The Tamil families who lost people, to tiger bombs, to government artillery, to the disappeared, are still waiting for answers. The soldiers who fought and the civilians who survived on both sides are still carrying what happened. And in 2022, just 13 years after the war ended, Sri Lanka experienced an economic collapse so severe that ordinary people were unable to buy fuel or medicine. Protesters stormed the presidential palace. The president fled the country. The Pearl of the Indian Ocean. Still beautiful. still breaking. Arab traders called this island the Pearl of the Indian Ocean. A pearl is formed by pressure, by a wound that will not heal, by layer after layer of material laid down around an irritant that the organism cannot expel and cannot ignore. Colombo has been forming around its wound for 70 years. The discrimination that ignited the war that scarred the city, the victory that sold nothing, the economic collapse that followed. And yet, the city is still there. The harbor still handles millions of tons of cargo every year. The gal-face green still fills with families on Sunday evenings. The Peta market still sells everything from spices to electronics to fabric. A new city is literally rising from the sea. Colombo keeps going. Not because the wound healed, but because the people who live there decided that waiting for it to heal was not an option. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Vaulted Cities right now. Every week we go to another city the world forgot and tell the story it never wanted told. And drop a comment below. Tell me, did you know the Tamil tigers invented the suicide vest? And which part of Colombo's story hit you the hardest? I read every single comment. Every city has shadows. We go there.